We don't do things for other people in order to get God to look down in favor upon us. We do things for other people. We serve because his love is in us, and that's how it comes out. Two very different things. And this passage brings out exactly that dynamic. Jesus is given a teaching here about what's important as we go through life. And it's not trying to win points for ourselves. Here it is. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he'll sit on his throne in heavenly glory, and all the nations will be gathered before him. And he'll separate the people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He'll put the sheep on his right hand and the goats on his left. And then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father. Take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. And I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." And then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?" In other words, they're confused. They're like, "We never saw you, Lord. We're just going through life, doing what we're supposed to do or doing what we feel called to do." And the king will reply, "I tell you the truth. Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers of mine, you did for me." And then he will say to those on his left, "Depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels." Those are powerful words. "For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me." And they also will answer, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or needing clothes or sick or in prison and did not help you?" And Jesus' meaning here is very clear. What they're saying is, if we had known it was you, then we would have helped. Because all they're worried about is advantage to themselves. And in Jesus' heart, that's not the way it is. We don't serve others thinking we'll get points for it. We serve because that mighty love is in us, and we share it out. And Jesus will reply, "I tell you the truth. Whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me." And then they will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. Why would a bunch of youth and a bunch of adults and a couple kids go away on mission trips? Because there's a love in us that we want to share outward. And this passage here is one of the main scriptures that people talk about when they talk about wanting to go on mission trips or feel the call, because they want to help and they want to serve and they want to love others. So, with that in mind, with all of you who went on either of the mission trips, come and join me in the altar here, on this area right here. Even if you're not going to speak, come on up. This will be a good time. So the message, come on right up in this area here, on the steps, wherever. So the message today is going to be witness from several people. And all of you have 10 minutes, okay? So that's 2 hours and 20 minutes. Just kidding. Glad to see you here. You're going to hopefully hear messages about how God worked in our lives and how we saw God working in the lives of others. All right. Who gets to lead us forward? I think Michael's being elected.
Okay. All right. I'm going to come right here. Well, those of us in the red and white shirts went on the youth mission trip. And these are some of the kids that went. These are kids from our church, from Willow Hill and Metamora, and even a couple from Savoy, I believe. Maybe they disappeared. Well, they might be somewhere in the church. So if you see somebody wandering around. But these kids came last night, and they stayed the night with us, and we had a really good time. We had fun running all over the church, playing games, and we watched the video last night. It brought back all kinds of memories from the trip we took earlier in the summer. And I guess my favorite part about this mission trip and the mission trip I took last summer with this group, and really all mission trips I've been on, is just that it lets you do something different from your everyday routine. And when you do new things, I think you experience God in new ways. And so it's just so cool to see, these kids, me, the other youth on the trip and adults that went with us, to see them in a new surroundings, doing new things, being challenged in ways they haven't been challenged before, being exhausted physically, exhausted emotionally, as we live with people that we've never lived with 24/7 for a week straight. And just having an opportunity to share with each other and to look for ways that God is moving in their lives, even that very week. And so I had the opportunity, I got to sit in a canoe with Tate and just have a really cool conversation about Jesus. And that was like my second week on the job. So I'm thinking, man, it doesn't get any better than this. I'm on a canoe on a lake in Southern Illinois talking about Jesus. Like, this is my job. So that was probably the highlight of the trip for me. But for all the kids that went, seeing them do new things, being challenged physically, emotionally, and then spiritually as well was really, really cool. And so we just thank you all for sending us on that trip and helping us to grow.
Michael, before you give the mic up, and during one of the really strenuous work sessions, you said one of the youth asked you a question that kind of made an impact. Why don't you share that with us?
So some of the work we did was painting a bathhouse outside. And so, I mean, you can imagine the things you come up with when you're painting all day. So we're talking about superheroes. We're talking about what's your favorite movie. We're laughing, having a good time. And then out of nowhere, one of our youth, and if he wants to reveal himself, I'll let him, but out of nowhere asks me, Michael, when was the first time that you knew God was real without anybody telling you? Just what a cool opportunity it was to be able to share my experience, how I came to know the Lord on my own, and to hear him ask that. Because when he asked that, his wheels are turning in his head, and he's thinking about it, and he's pondering his own faith. And so it's just so cool to watch these guys grow from last year to this year. And I can't wait for next year to see how much more we all grow in a year in our faith. So who's next?
All right. So I hate speaking in front of people. So this weekend, they decided to let me do the children's message and talk at all the services just to try and get myself comfortable, I guess. Yes. So I'm just going to read what I wrote because otherwise it probably won't come out. So this is the second mission trip that I feel honored to have been a part of. After attending last year's trip, I received an email we all got this year asking us to speak about our experience. Public speaking is not something I'm comfortable with, so I wrote my thoughts on paper for someone else to read. And I'm going to read just a quick paragraph of that letter. The most spiritual moment of the trip for me was when we spent an evening at the Beverly Methodist Church service. This service was full of people from two completely different work camps celebrating God and the difference that he makes in our lives, in the lives of others. This service was held on the last day of our stay, and everybody was radiating joy from our experiences, and many people shared these experiences that night. There were many components of this service that were heartwarming and that had a huge impact on my soul. One of these moments was when the story was told about a guitar player and how Redbird saved his life and now he was giving back. This made me realize that one small act of kindness can make a life-changing impact on someone and you don't even know it. The moment that stands out most to me was at the end of the service. The entire church was standing and singing with great enthusiasm, and I began to cry. This was the first time that I can remember being overcome with this kind of emotion from a church service. In that very moment, I knew that I wanted to help others. I do not just want to help people at work. I want to help make real impact on lives. I want to make people smile, and I want to make people feel loved. I want to make people feel the way that I did in that very moment. I knew the way that I was going to do this was through God. I knew that I needed to surround myself with Christians and share this love and compassion because because that energy and that feeling was the best I had felt in a long time. So throughout this past year, I submerged myself in the culture of our church. I gave my time to the church through many volunteer opportunities, attended as many classes and book studies as I could, came to church every Sunday, and asked lots of questions. I kept getting the feeling that I was being called to serve, but I didn't understand it, and quite honestly, it scared me. I had this discussion many times with Jim, but I was not sure that it would ever be a reality for me. This second mission trip was the true turning point for me, and oddly enough, it happened on our fun day. A group of us decided to go ziplining, and it is an experience that I will never forget. We had 2 youth on the mission trip with us, Avery and then my son Brody. I would gladly tell you the story in detail sometime if you would like, but the short version is that our group watched Avery overcome her fear while standing on the platform by, in her own words, saying a prayer and then stepping off, knowing that God would make it okay. And she did this all 8 times. You had to be there to know the bonding experience that situation created for our group and the powerful discussions that came from it. That experience got me thinking a lot about overcoming my fears, trusting God, and I stayed up till 3 a.m. writing a devotion to give that last night of our trip that I titled, When Fear Paralyzes Your Faith. That is the first time that I told anybody other than Pastor Jim and my husband my true feelings about feeling called to serve and all the fears that came with the unknown. That night, I asked my fellow mission trippers to support me as I took a scary step and proclaimed out loud my intentions to follow God for whatever it is that he may be calling me to do. I was not home a week when I felt compelled to share the devotion with the church and put myself out there for a second time. I sat in a room of about 10 people and shared my story and asked my church family to support me as I proclaimed out loud again my intentions to follow God's call, whatever it may be. And now look at me. I'm standing here again, sharing my faith journey with you guys and asking for your support as well. I know that I have a long ways to go, but these 2 mission trips have been pivotal moments in my faith journey. I think those trips were God's way of taking me out of my everyday life and allowing me to just enjoy his love and share his love with others. We forget in the chaos of our lives to stop and look around us. We forget to appreciate the sacrifices that God made to allow us to be the people that he created. I went on both trips hoping for something special and came back not only a different person, but a better person, both times. I hope to share the message with the kids in our church repeatedly that God is not present in our lives always, or that God is present in our lives always and everywhere, not just on Sunday mornings and Wednesday evenings. And so these mission trips for me have been a time when I got to slow down and open myself up to the wonderful things that God has to offer. So thanks for helping me go on these trips as well. Anyone?
Hello, I'm Barb Cullen. This is my 4th mission trip. And this one was a little different because we weren't at Redbird, where you basically get plugged into their system and everything's lined up for you. We had to kind of create our own, which was really different, and it was a lot of fun too. The most important part that I'm going to take away from this was our last night at camp. We had devotions every night, and Jim usually led them. On the Friday night, Kara led our devotions about her fears. But the part that I liked the most about it is that we had communion. And it was the intention where you take a piece of bread and dip it into the juice. And usually it's served to you by a minister. But that night we served each other and would say something to the person that we were giving it to. And it was very touching and emotional for all of us. And we had we'll hear maybe later about Brother James, who is the maintenance man there. He has quite a faith story. And he joined us several nights for our worship. But that night, one of the other camp counselors came in because her car wouldn't start. And she was looking for Brother Jim to help her. And she stayed for our devotions. So after we were finished, they left. Pretty soon, here comes Brother James back. And he said, I think her name was Kara. It was a Kara. Yeah, Kara. He said, well, the reason her car wouldn't start is because she was out of gas. And so that was easily fixed. But she shared with him that she is a Lutheran by denomination, and she had never had communion with other people besides Lutherans. This was her first time to share it. So Brother James says God wanted her here to share it with us. And that was a very poignant moment, I thought. And I really enjoyed it. Now I'll take that away from that.
I really want the young people, but they don't seem to either be awake or willing to say something other than Michael. I invited my great niece to go with me the last 2 trips because she has a heart for missions. She really wanted to go to Uganda, but she ended up going to Redbird Mission, and this is her report. Now, understand, she's not quite as tall as Michael, but pretty close. And so it was really Mutt and Jeff. She says, "My name is Kate Sandrick. I'm Judy Doyle's niece. My first experience with missions was attending Redbird in rural Kentucky. Really rural. My mom would say I turned my nose up at a mission trip in Kentucky because I wanted to be doing missions in Africa or somewhere farther away. Mom just said, rural Kentucky is another world. Just go and see." And I will repeat, very rural. Side note, no cells, no cell phone service, no internet, very rural. She says, "I was a little nervous about attending as the only young one of the group, and apparently some of the others on the trip felt the same way. But it was a great experience, and I created a lot of lasting friendships. I attended that trip in guarded physical shape with the neck and back issues, and was worried I might not be able to keep up physically as we pulled up old floors and replaced them, painted, and much more. I remembered someone mentioned we couldn't get hurt because the hospital was so far away. Yikes. I just reminded myself when I was tired that I could still serve through the ministry of presence, just being there, visiting, talking. I also had another important job. To play with the dog so he wouldn't steal everyone's work gloves. That was her job. Fast forward to this year, Little Grassy Camp. Recovering from meningitis and still having issues with my neck and back, I still went, hoping to see friends from the last mission trip and have some neat time with my aunt. This trip, I learned more about myself. It's not just about helping others, but fellowship and being with others, serving. Brother James' testimony touched me. He shared of his struggle with alcohol. His positive attitude was contagious and helped me realize none of us are perfect, but each of us is enough. Enough for Jesus to have died for us. Each of us is enough. At Little Grassy Camp, I was able to share some of my personal struggles and confided in others. I learned it's okay to open yourself up to others, and people care more for you than you realize. I might be brave and natural at ziplining, but I learned that in what I thought was a trip to serve others was a trip to help me discover I have several friends in my corner praying for me and leading.
Thank you, Judy.
First, I would just like to thank this church. This is my 4th mission trip, 2nd as a leader, and it's just a blessing that you guys support this church, this youth group, so we can go and make an impact on people's lives. I was with Michael Berg most of the week. We power washed and painted decks and painted the bathroom floor and had a good talk. And this time as a leader, I stepped up a little bit more than I did last year, and I kind of saw what to look for in the kids. I gave a prayer shawl to one of the people at the dining hall that helped give us and make our food every day and help pray over her. And then Friday we had a spirit walk, and I was asked and in charge of praying for these kids as they went on the spirit walk to help them find God in their life. And then after the spirit walk, I had some of the youth come up to me and they asked me to pray over them. So I just felt God keep leading me to help follow these youth. It's kind of hard now as I'm going to be leaving them soon, but they know that I'm always there for them, and I've shared my faith story many times with them. And thank you for this opportunity.
So, Brody, what was your favorite part of the mission trip? What?
The water slide we made.
Oh, the water slide we made, the slip and slide? Yeah. Did you work on this trip?
Yes.
Did you enjoy that work?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Avery and Brody, we made them work, and they were excellent sports. They worked hard. You saw the picture of us laying back in the recliners. They were still going strong. Trips like this are incredible for the bonding that happens. And around here, we have relationships and bonding, which is good, but it goes to deeper levels on trips like this. And we worship every night. And I think about this, say, hey, youth, will you go on this trip with us? And we're going to worship every night. Like, what? But it's powerful and it's wonderful. And as the week goes on, you'll see more and more youth kind of step out of their comfort zones, take a risk, and say something about their life and how they're starting to sense maybe how God is working in life, in their life, and how they're seeing God around. And sometimes we have surprises that people you'd never guess would share out loud faith stories. They would do that. We had at least 2 or 3 very powerful youth witnesses about life and so forth. Any of you want to? Oh, Kathy's got. Okay, good. And then some of the rest of you youth can think about something to say. Go ahead.
Do any of you guys want to talk first? Any of the youth? No, they're all shaking their head. They're not making eye contact. You notice they're staying looking that way. In case you don't know, I'm from Willow Hill. I am the youth leader for the senior high at Willow Hill, but I'm also familiar to you guys, I hope, because I'm your business manager here at First. So I work at both places. But the awesome thing about this was my entire family got to go. My husband, who's not here right now, he's taking care of horses and other things back home. And then my 2 daughters, and then my extended family got to come as far as the other youth and the other people. There were 4 churches, 40 people. I was the one that fed them, and they all lived. And so, I must have done something a little right. The really crazy part was they trusted me to be the nurse, and I pass out at blood. So there was no blood, so we made it through that too. But the really awesome thing was that there were so many things that we saw. But as Pastor Jim shared with the worship at night, we started trying to help them understand that they can be a part of worship. And one of the really cool things that we did that I never got right, but was we would talk about where we had seen God during the day, and we would have a yay God moment. We would all. So we would tell how we had seen him. And then the one that I never got right was when we would talk about things that were just kind of cool, maybe not necessarily just God things, but were cool. And we would say, I never got it right. That's pretty neat. I always tried to say that's pretty cool. But anyways, they accepted it. But we taught them that they can be a part of it. And it was really cool because in the beginning we would be singing and we would be worshiping, and it would just be, like maybe some of us adults, and the kids would just be sitting there. But then they got into it and they started realizing that God was talking to them during the week. And it was really cool to see how God changed their life and just came in. It was really neat how God came in and touched their lives. But one of the things that I got to share was approximately 2 years ago, I don't know if you'll remember, but I had been diagnosed with cancer. And during that time, I was given a prayer shawl. And so I was able to share how that prayer shawl meant so much to me, because at a time like that, I could sit in a chair and I could wrap myself in that prayer shawl. And I would know that not only had people prayed over that prayer shawl and in turn prayed over me, but that God was holding me in a special way during that moment. And so we talked about what that was like, and then we got to give that to people. You've heard the talk of Brother James. He was the handyman there, and he lived not so neat of a life. But yet, let me tell you, when he came in the morning, you knew he was there. He was a morning person. I am not. But he came in whistling and talking about what a great day it was and how awesome Jesus was.
And when 10 o'clock would roll around and some of us are ready for bed, he's still talking about how great Jesus is. And I'm thinking, go to bed, buddy. But he just exuded it. But we were able to give him a prayer shawl, and just to see the emotion of that, to know that we wanted him to know that God was with him, even when we left. That was pretty cool. It was great to see this man who was always happy, to see him touched at such a level. And the kids got to do that. The last thing I'll share is we took the kids at the very end to East St. Louis and took them to an experience there to talk to them about how you can be the hands and feet of Jesus in ways that you don't even expect, in areas you don't expect to be. And it's a ministry that is supported by the United Methodist Church, where they go out into the community, create a hot meal for the people and feed them. They talked about how the first year it was kind of a flop. They got themselves together, they re-looked at it, and now it's a huge ministry, and they're feeding. I'm looking at Reverend Jim. Thousands. I mean, it was unbelievable the number of people that they feed daily. And then the kids that they meet right where they are, and they tell them about Jesus. And we walked down the road in East St. Louis, and these kids would come running out of the houses and say, Pastor Kim, how awesome it is to see you. And how awesome it was for us to see that we can be the church outside of these walls.
Okay. Anybody who hasn't spoken, feeling the nudge? Oh, I thought you were going to reach for the mic there, Max. You're just scratching your arm. Okay. Okay, thank you for sending us on the mission trips. Anybody that's up here would happily share more experiences with you. We could probably talk for hours. I know the youth are kind of shy, but they inspired us with their witnesses around the campfire or in the lodge at worship. There may be people out here today who are thinking, well, I would never go on a mission trip. Probably most of these at some point did that too. There may be people out here today who God is kind of tapping on the shoulder saying, think about next year, think about next year. There's some of you who can't go on mission trips physically anymore, but there are a lot of ways to support the mission trips. We're always, it costs a lot to go, so we're always asking for that, so that's one way. And we always try to ask the congregation to pray for us. It's very, very important. And remember what I always would say leading up to the mission trips? Please pray for what God wants to do in us and through us. And it's both. It's a double-edged sword. God works in our lives in the mission trips and strengthens our faith, and there's a ripple effect there. It moves outward and the kingdom grows. And also the service work that we do helps the kingdom to grow as well. So thank you all. And we're going to stand as we're able and sing this great hymn of the faith, a new hymn of the faith, Here I Am, Lord. And